Welcome back to Legacy Builders Unleashed podcast. Now, this series is really turning out to be one of the best series that we've had so far. And we're really excited about the conversations that we're having around government contracting. And specifically, I'm excited to introduce to you Luis Medina. He's the Director of Procurement and Contracts, Aviation for the Ontario International Airport. And so there's a lot of value that he's going to provide through some Q&A conversations. But for those of you that are in that area, I think this is something that you're really going to want to listen into. Thank you so much for being here, Luis.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. So let's dive right into it because we got a lot to cover, a lot of valuable information to share. So from your experience working in public sector procurement and aviation related environments, how would you describe your role and your responsibility in general terms?
Yeah, good question. As you mentioned in your introduction, I do work for a joint powers authority in the aviation sector as the Director of Procurement and Contracts. In my position, I oversee the day-to-day operations for procurement, contracts, warehouse, and capital procurement. At this point in my career, I'm a little removed from the day-to-day actually being the main point of contact for RFPs or formal solicitations. I have a great team that I have the privilege to work with that manages that, and I oversee them in approving their work, reviewing, coaching, training in any capacity that I can.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so what aspects of public sector procurement do you think are most misunderstood by businesses new to the space?
That is something I wish more people would ask. I think something that a common misconception is that government procurement or public procurement is slow because we like being slow. But in reality, those guardrails, as I'd like to call them, they exist because we're spending taxpayer dollars. And
Yes.
the oversight is there to protect everyone from the taxpayer to my employer, the organization, and the
Yeah.
vendor or supplier or contractor that we may be going into business with in the future. Another misunderstanding is that the agencies, public agencies, just pick whoever they want, that it's a good old boys club
Yeah.
when it's not that way. In truth, we follow strict rules, scoring methods, evaluation criteria, and documentation requirements, which are all listed in public sector's formal solicitations. It's a very transparent process.
Yeah.
And those decisions must be transparent and defensible. And the biggest one I would say is newcomers underestimate how much planning they have to do in order to be successful in a procurement. The
Mm.
procurement or the formal solicitation, the RFP, whatever you want to call it, isn't a handshake deal. It's a process heavy by design, and the businesses that struggle are the ones expecting shortcuts.
So that's really good. And I agree 100% with that because I want to lean into something that you just said that's very, very powerful is the amount of prep work that needs to be done. So we can't expect that we're just going to win a contract because we exist, right? Like there's merit behind it, it's integrity, and it's our tax, it's my tax dollars, it's residents' tax dollars, it's business owner tax dollars that are filtering through the system to make the economy work better. And so I appreciate the time that it takes because we're not talking small contracts, right? Even the smaller contracts is not a small contract, right? So we want to be considerate about all just reviewing everything, making sure that we're making the right decision. And it is not a good old boy system. It's one of the biggest myths that I hit too, Luis, is, oh, it's a good old boy system. You just have to know who you know. It's like they might be able to send you the solicitation, but they can't award you the contract. So we still need
Yes.
to put our best foot forward and present excellence. So I appreciate you really sharing that. It's great feedback.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
yeah. So what signals professionalism and credibility to procurement for professionals across the public sector, in your
Mm,
opinion?
I would say consistency is the biggest signal. If
Mm-hmm.
a vendor consistently meets deadlines, and let me backtrack a little bit. When I say vendor, that's just the word I'm using for supplier, contractor, small business owner, or whatever. It's just my go-to
Yeah.
choice of words. So if a vendor consistently meets deadlines, they submit their completed and accurate documents on time, follow instructions, and communicate clearly with whatever public agency they are trying to go into business with, they immediately stand out. And
Mm-hmm.
also paying attention to detail. I've just, in my research and curiosity and trying to keep up to date with industry practices, I've seen several public agencies formal solicitations, and while they are laid out and organized differently and the aesthetics of it are differently, they all hold the same meat and potatoes, if you will, which is their documentation requirement. They have a list of administrative requirements that they want to see, tax documents, business licenses. If it's a construction project, the contractor's licensure in that area. And if a supplier or potential bidder misses out on those things, which could be perceived from someone's point of view as the things that don't really matter, on the evaluator side, from the whatever public sector they may be trying to work with, that may be a huge differentiator between a professional, incredible firm versus one that's not. Professionalism also shows through how they respond when something goes wrong. So we're human, we all make mistakes. Those employed by public sectors and those employed by private sectors are all going to make mistakes at some point, but how they respond to them, if they take ownership, correct those issues quickly, and keep the agency informed, they really outshine those that try to stay in the dark and hope that things don't get caught.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to the word you shared earlier is guardrails. This is why I believe that there are guardrails because, like you said, we're all human. And to expect that it's going to be perfect, that's why we have the guardrails. It's a protection on both sides. And we don't have to think about it, right? Like it's just there. We just follow the rules. But really, something that I see, one of the mistakes that I see business owners make, especially when they're younger in their business, is they overlook those details. Well, let me just share with you, my audience, really quick, is that there's an intent behind a question. If they're requesting this information, there is an intent behind it. It's not just to annoy you or nag you, right? That's not what this is. But this is to make sure that it is a fair but also sustainable decision to select a contractor or vendor to provide those services or goods. We want to make sure that you can actually deliver excellence because again, these are tax dollars. We need to be very thoughtful on who we're selecting. So if we're rushing through and putting together a proposal or a price sheet and we're not double checking our work, first it is going to indicate that this is how you work. Like your proposal, your submittal for that contract is how you perform work. So if there's mistakes, there will be mistakes in doing business with you. So that's one thing. But the other thing is to give you a fair chance. And so we want to make sure that if you're putting your best foot forward, you're making sure you're dotting on your I's and crossing your T's, doing that quality check before you submit, it'll put you in a better position because you're putting the right information in front of the right buyers. This is so, so crucial. So I'm glad that you touched on that, Luis.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And if I can add to that, is
Yeah.
not speaking for my employer specifically, but just most public agencies that I've seen, there is generally three scoring sections when reviewing RFP responses, and that's in no specific order. An administrative review, so reviewing all these documents, licenses, and anything that was asked from that agency. Their technical response, which is their actual bid, and then an interview. What I've seen many times and unfortunately in employed in many different areas, is sometimes there's no mindfulness that goes to the administrative requirements, and they are either submitted not completed or not submitted at all.
Mm.
And some of these larger firms have amazing proposal writers that really come through in their proposals as far as organization and standing out and the aesthetics of all of it. It's a very beautiful, if you will, proposal. But then there's a separate team that gets sent to the interview that isn't the same team that wrote the proposal. And sometimes those teams don't communicate with each other. And it shows very clearly when that happens. And I've been in situations where I kind of scratch my head, and I really wish I could stop the process and just ask, like, hey, what happened here? Like, you guys are all on the same team. And it's just something that I feel from my lens would be so easy to just coordinate and say, hey, agency XYC released this RFP and here's their requirements. They're telling us how they're going to score it. Let's really focus on this before we focus on trying to make it beautiful, if that makes sense.
100%. 100%. I I'm so grateful for you because Luis, what you said, and so just like a quick background is I was in corporate America and that was my job is to make it really attractive. But before I entered the world of government contracts, I was responsible for marketing and business development. So words matter, and especially the technical part, responses. So I'm giggling over here because I know exactly what you mean, where there's like a hand pass, like it's just here, make it nice. Here's all the information, pull it from something else. And when you go to the interview, it's like when someone goes to the interview, it's night
What
and
does that
day.
mean?
It's it's like, did you write this? Because that is not the same language. So, I mean, just a few things for the audience. It's just one thing is it leads with the project approach. You know, from doing this for a very long time, having my clients achieve over billions of dollars, in addition to what I did in corporate America, the number one thing that leads your response is your project approach. So, how are you going to deliver the excellence you say you can, and walking people through that in your response and in the interview? If you cannot articulate that, then stop what you're doing and start there. And 100%, Luis is right. The aesthetics is secondary. It does catch people's attention. It used to be the days where we would print out the proposals, ship them to the offices, and they'd have to flip through them. And of course, aesthetics stood out, right? That was really important because it was like picking a book that you wanted to read. Unfortunately, there are teams that focus only on aesthetics and not the technical approach, not actually responding to the need of the project, of the contract. And so when you are working on a high profile project and you need to go to interview, you better believe your team should be, even though they are writing the proposal or participating in the construction of the proposal, you should also make sure to read it again before you start preparing for the interview. So that way everybody is on the same page. I know we all have busy schedules and busy lives, but this is an important element to building long-term relationships with the people that are in the room that are making a decision on your contract. So yeah, we're having such a great conversation. I love this.
There's I'll end with this for this specific question.
Yeah.
There's a phrase in the woodworking community that says, measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
The same thought frame can be applied to corporate America agencies trying to get these public contracts. Review again, and if necessary, have it peer reviewed by someone else before you submit that proposal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so good. So good. All right. So let's transition to like what actions help businesses build trust and long term credibility in public sector environments?
Yeah, perfect segue from the last thing we were just talking about. So I would say show your work. The way that you respond, an agency responds to a RFP, I believe is a direct representation of the type of work they're going to provide that agency if they were awarded a contract. So if you can deliver in the RFP response, then continue that same approach. If you're awarded a contract, deliver on the contract terms, be responsive, keep insurance and licensing updated, submit invoices on time that match the contract. I believe that trust can grow when vendors do the basics really well and do them consistently. Long-term credibility is built through reliability, not grand gestures. There sometimes people think that they can invite you out to lunch at a five-star restaurant, or send you tickets to a ball game, when that's not the way public agencies work. That's actually very illegal,
It's
and
very,
not allowed to do that. But
yeah,
I
I do want to emphasize, I need to cut you off and just emphasize to our audience in case you guys are going to mute for a second, is you do not want to send any form of physical gifts or monetary gifts to any agency, any government. It is it's a very bad thing. Okay. It's a very, very bad thing. This is not, we can't accept it. This is something that is noted. So we want to avoid it by all cost. And a happy email, a phone call, a gesture of sorts that can be perceived as a great gift. Very simple and easy way. But continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, great point. No, no worries. I'm glad you interrupted, because I couldn't agree with you more. Building relationships ethically and organically by attending vendor days or industry days, attending pre-bid conferences, monitoring that agency's website, their procurement portal, asking smart questions, and understanding that agency's mission goes way longer and farther than sending a can of cookies or something of the like.
I know exactly what you mean. Like, it's just no cookies, no popcorn, uh, you know, no steak packages, no nuts and whatever. It's a different type of relationship, and it's all organic. 100%. I agree with that. So going into the next question is, what communication practices tend to build clarity and confidence with public agencies, regardless of agency or industry, really?
Clear, concise communication that just gets to the point wins every time.
Mm.
Sometimes vendors overwhelm agencies or project managers with long emails or information overload, and I'm not sure what the mentality behind it is, whether it's they're trying to hide something or they think more information is better. But most public agencies, they have project managers that are leading multiple contracts, multiple projects at the same time. It's not just one PM for one project, and clear and concise information wins every time. Confirm what you understand, ask questions early when you don't understand something, and never make an assumption that you know what the agency wants. If you need clarification, public agencies would much rather you ask all the questions you want, as opposed to not asking anything and then creating roadblocks later on down the process. Most public agencies have an RFI time period, which is a request for information, where they can submit questions if they need a clarification on certain, whether it's bid specifications or administrative requirements, and the agency will publicly post those responses. They won't only respond to the vendor that asked the question, they will distribute it to everyone with the hopes of maybe company A asked this question, but company B also has the same question and they can see the answer there. So being transparent about delays or issues builds confidence. And if I could end by saying, silence is the fastest way to lose trust. If you just be silent and don't say anything, don't do anything, then is that the type of work that agency is going to receive if they were to award you a contract? You know, communication doesn't have to be constant, just consistent.
That's good. Oh, that's really good. Okay, I need to break down a few things for our audience. So, the RFI, the window of opportunity. So, when there is a solicitation out, there is this deadline for questions that is going to show up in the solicitation. Sometimes it's called a request for information, an RFI window, or you could see deadline for questions, deadline to ask for feedback, that type of thing. And that's really cut and dry. If it's at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, it is 2 o'clock on Tuesday. If you send something at 2:01, it is too late. So you want to make sure that you get it in early and on time. But the other part of that is, as a business owner, you might be thinking, well, I don't want other people to really know our strategy. Well, here's the thing. There is a way to ask smart, strategic questions. We don't want to have these very vague questions because we'll get vague answers. So knowing how to ask a question is very important during that session, that specific window of time. Now, if it's before or after the contract award, so say, for example, the solicitation hasn't come out yet, you're looking at the budgets or a capital improvement plan or something like that, those are great opportunities just to pick up the phone or email and ask, say, hey, can I ask you a few questions about this opportunity? What are your expectations? What are your plans? So that you can do your due diligence ahead of time and know ahead, like further on, what type of questions that I might need to get asked before that solicitation comes out. So that's like a little like nerdy nugget there. But after the awarded contract, you want to do your due diligence. Who was awarded? Hopefully you were, but who was awarded if it wasn't? And just asking for feedback from that contracting officer. That's their goal, is to make better vendors, right? So they're not trying to push you out. They're actually trying to push you in. Right now, they need what you have right now. Okay. So it's in your best effort to put your best foot forward. So, and I think there was one more thing, I should have wrote it down, but it'll come back to me later on that I wanted to point out, but this is so good. All right. How can business, yeah,
Point.
sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I've seen some firms submit more than 100 questions, and they're all very valid and very appropriate questions, and it just shows their level of preparedness and level of commitment to really submitting a solid proposal to a formal solicitation. There's regardless of what the agency calls that period of time, it's really there for the vendor to take advantage of it and ask any and all questions they want to ask.
Yeah. I remember what it was. Thank you, Luis. So when you're asking the question, remember that you are the expert. The vendors, you are the expert. You're in the private sector more than likely. You are on the front lines of your industry, your markets. And when you're bringing that excellence, that level of expertise, keep that hat on. Because those are the types of questions, like almost consultative, right? We want to ask those questions that are consultative through that process and not just, I need to ask a question. You don't need to ask a question, but read through the RFP, make sure you understand the solicitation and exactly where that money is coming from and where it's going next, and what's the impact of the project or the contract, excuse me. And then also understand the buyer, understand the agency, what's their mission, their culture, what's their goals this year, what's their fiscal planning, things like that, before you go into asking a question. All right. So that's another nerdy nugget. It's more than just asking the question. It's understanding the client as if they're sitting across from you and they're asking for help. How would you ask those questions so you can get the best information from them to put together a response? in your proposal response. Really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So how can businesses appropriately learn about public sector opportunities and agency missions while staying with ethical boundaries from your experience?
Yeah, excellent question. Most public agencies that I've seen use either their own website or a third-party platform such as Planet Bids or UNA Supplier Network, which was formerly known as Bonfire, OpenGov. There's so many of them out there where they post their solicitations. And those platforms, whether it be that agency's website or a third party platform, are open to the public, free to register, and it shows you which solicitations are active, which are upcoming, which have been awarded. Another thing they can look at is strategic plans released by that agencies, capital improvement plans released by that agencies, board agendas, budget documents, and a lot of agencies have vendor days or industry days where the public can come talk to the project managers, the capital team, the procurement team, the finance team, and really just ask their questions and get to know the needs and the missions of that agency. Asking clarifying questions during open solicitations, as we just got done talking about, attending pre-bid meetings. Maybe you're a firm that isn't going to submit a proposal for this specific solicitation, but you want to know what to expect in the future. You want to know what a pre-bid meeting is. Attend that pre-bid meeting. That's what they're there. They are public meetings that they're not mandatory, and it's usually just an agency reiterating some of the key highlights of that solicitation and also allowing time for project managers to kind of hone in on what they're going to be looking for in proposals. You can ask these questions before the solicitations, during the solicitations, and the procurement team, the contracts team, they're always going to be there as your liaison between, usually, I can't speak for every agency, but most public agencies are, the procurement teams operate very much the same. They're the liaison between the public and the project management team. So ask those individuals all the questions you have. The rule is simple: stay in the sunshine. Uh, if you want to be noticed, if you want to be informed, if you want to understand, follow these agencies, pay attention to what they're doing, pay attention to what they're releasing, and that is the best way you can set yourself up.
Stay in the sunshine.
Doing everything ethically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ethics is it's a game changer in life and especially in business, but we only speak to ethical, integral business owners on this podcast. So, but I love that. Stay in the sunshine. I love that. So we talked a lot about the front of the business development, the procurement, but let's talk about pricing for a second. For a general procurement perspective, what distinguishes thoughtful pricing strategies from poorly considered ones?
I would say that thoughtful pricing is it's realistic, it's sustained, and it's clearly supported. Vendors who understand their cost, overhead or whatever cost, who understand their costs, understand market conditions and labor requirements, tend to price responsibly. Bad pricing usually stands out pretty quickly because it's either far too low, which could signal a huge risk factor there, or an unexplained high amount, which doesn't compare to, the rest of the bidders. So if you can't show your math, evaluators may assume the worst because they don't know what they're getting, whether it's on either end of the spectrum, whether it's too low or too high. A strong pricing strategy is stable across the contract term. It's not a shot in the dark where let's just throw a number out there to win this contract and we'll figure out the number later. No, figure out the numbers before you submit your pricing, and then you can win that contract. It's not a
100%.
guarantee. It's just
Yeah. It's you're more likely in alignment with what they're expecting. And so there are different types of contracts, right? There's the ones that we'll see on the procurement side, and then there's others that are lower threshold that are not required to be advertised. So we want to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward when pricing comes to mind. And I love that suggestion of showing your numbers, because even though, like, there have been some times with other agencies, but where I've seen that the scope did not include a specific thing that they needed for that project. And so it was added as an optional pricing structure in addition to what the client asked for. And that was appreciated because no one caught it. No one brought it up with the question and answers, the pre-bid meeting. No one caught it except for this one client that I had. So those are the types of things. Just going back to, you want to show up as you're a problem solver. You're not just there for the dollars. You're there to build a long-term relationship with these agencies that are improving and impacting the way that we live. So this is important. This is really important stuff. What internal systems or skills should businesses strengthen to be better positioned for future public sector opportunities?
the first one that comes to mind, I would say, is compliance systems.
Mm.
Insurance tracking, contract management, financial controls. These can really make or break vendors' performance. And most of these projects work off of milestones. And very, very strict budgets. So if you can't be compliant within those systems, then I feel like it could really affect performance uh, overall. Another thing would be strong personal writing skills. I think those are important too. Businesses need people who can interpret requirements and documents and build complete and accurate responses. We were touching on that earlier with proposal writers. I've seen some amazing written proposals that it's very evident that the person behind that clearly understood that agency's missions and requirements. And having someone like that on your team can go a long way even after a contract is awarded. If you're an agency that submits a bid and you're fortunate enough to be the firm that's selected and awarded the contract, all those things that you did to ensure that contract shouldn't stop once you've been awarded this contract, once you've received a notice to proceed. If anything, they should continue and keep on growing even stronger, because it's important on both sides that communication, those relationships stay strong. And lastly, I'd say they would need operational capacity to actually deliver the work. Have the right people, not just the right people, but enough people to deliver on the contract terms and conditions. You no agency wants to see a contractor win a contract and then not be able to perform because of staffing issues. So operational capacity is big too. Public contracts come with as I was saying earlier, reporting, timelines, audits. And one thing that public agencies, as far as I know, all of them are susceptible to is public records request.
Mm.
There are companies who are looking for agencies to make sure that they're doing everything ethically and as advertised, with reporting and timelines and audits. Vendors need structure, not improvisation. They can't just figure it out on the fly. There needs to be some structure and some planning ahead of time.
Whew. There's a lot to unpack in this. Okay, so I'm going to say, because I don't want to make this longer than it needs to be, but if you heard that for the first time, I would highly recommend that you go listen to that again. because what he said, what Luis said, is so important to your business. And more than likely, you already have some established systems and frameworks in your business, but we just want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in the row. And especially our entrepreneurs out there, you may have just rushed and gotten success through your business, but now it is time to really protect your business and do the right things. And gladly, the government is in support of that. So making sure you have the systems, the process, the operational team to deliver, technical team if needed, and also just the back end to make sure that you're comfortable with continuing to build that relationship with the client or other clients too, whether that's public or private sector. So this is infrastructure of a business, but the way that you just explained it, Luis, perfect. It was perfect. Definitely will be very valuable to our audience. One last question for you.
Sure.
What advice would you offer businesses that want to enter public sector procurement the right way?
Know that it's possible. Earlier in this conversation, I talked about public agencies. They don't operate under the good old boys club or just handshake deals. So most public agencies are making it possible for any qualified vendor to potentially win this contract. So one, know that it's possible, believe in yourself, do your homework, understand the rules before you play the game. Most agencies are very, very transparent in how they're scoring, how they're evaluating, what they're looking for, the scope of work. Focus on that first before anything else. If you've never done work with a public agency, if this is all new to you, maybe you can start small. Like I said earlier, maybe you attend a pre-bid meeting that's not a project you're going to award, not a project that you're going to respond to via written proposal, but you just want to learn. Maybe you want to meet the procurement team. Maybe you want to know what a pre-bid meeting is and what to know to expect when it's your turn and you're actually trying to get that contract. Or maybe you can do a service agreement or a cooperative contract, a co-op, or maybe you're a subcontractor for the primary contractor. There's many ways you can learn the rhythm of public sector work before you're actually the prime contractor, if you will. I'm thinking like in construction terms. And if I could reiterate, I know I sound kind of like a broken record here, but follow the instructions exactly. Be patient, ask questions, build a track record. Clear, constant communication consistent communication goes a long way. If you don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask questions. That's the guardrails that I talked about at the very beginning, the way the process is built. It's specifically designed for you to be able to ask questions and it not be looked at negatively. If anything, it's only going to make you stand out because it's showing that you're really prepared and that you're actually paying attention. And finally, remember that credibility is earned through execution. If you show up prepared, reliable, and ethical, you're already ahead of half of the field, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, price is law, right? So there's 80% of the time we're 20% is going to outwork the other 80%. It totally makes sense that we're seeing that. I'm seeing that too. There's a lot of mediocrity out there, even in government contracting, but the professionals, the experts, those that are really serious about excellence, clarity, confidence, and integrity, those are the ones that lean forward and intend to have the best success in government contracting. So, we're still going to apply good business, right? We're still going to apply good customer service. Some of you might be listening and saying, this just sounds really no-brainer. Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help you see that there's nothing to be afraid of. You can actually start bidding right now. Now, whether or not you're going to win or not is your strategy. It comes down to positioning, strategy, and understanding what is your differentiator, what's going to make you stand out, and the value that you're going to deliver to that agency. And we'll talk about that in another episode. But is there anything else, Luis, that you would like to share with our audience today?
I could understand if I put myself in the public's shoes, how maybe this process can be intimidating or overwhelming at first. A lot of these agencies, their documents are very long and not always the funnest read. But no, if you can take one thing away from our conversation today, is know that that process was built that way for a reason, and try to break it down in sections. Maybe it's a 50-page document or more, and it could be a little overwhelming, but break it down into sections. Try to understand the scope of work first to see if it's something you're interested in, something you're qualified to be able to respond to, and then maybe focus on the requirements, the scoring, the evaluation, the timelines. And the timelines are key. You had mentioned earlier when we were talking about the RFI or the question period, that about when it closes. So a lot of agencies that use third-party platforms, they're set up to where if the RFI period closes today at 2 p.m., and that's what's advertised, the system will not let you submit questions past that date and time. So these dates, these timelines are key. Pay attention to those, and you'll be off to a good start.
Amazing. Thank you. This has been a great podcast episode. I really am just very appreciative of your time today and sharing your expertise with our audience in their journey in government contracting, but just overall just feeling like just the confidence, like I could do this. This is something that's doable and possible for my life and my business. So this is really cool. For everybody that's listening right now, and for you guys that are just kind of consuming and digesting this information, I highly recommend to go back and listen to it again. There's a lot of golden nuggets that Luis dropped, and that's really going to help you with your journey. And then also make sure to like and subscribe, but also keep this in mind. Don't delay. Every day there are new opportunities. You do not want to delay. You don't want to think about, well, I'll think about it later on, and next month or next year. You want to actually start taking action right now. And it could be as simple as reaching out to your procurement officer. You could be as simple as just seeing what contracts are available and open to bid right now. It could just be that simple step to just get acclimated to the process and start thinking about how you're going to diversify your existing established business with government contracts. All right. Well, thank you so much again, Luis, for being here. And yeah, this is amazing. All right.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed our conversation, and yeah, I hope someone takes something away from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.